From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
Once leading in the polls, former treasurer and gubernatorial candidate Frank Caprio finished third in the 2010 race for governor, capped off by the now infamous "shove it" comment. The longtime Democrat has been virtually silent since the defeat until now. A savvy politician and impressive fundraiser, Caprio is once again looking to get his old job back, throwing his hat into the ring as a candidate for general treasurer. This week on Newsmakers, in his first television interview since his run for governor, former treasurer Frank Caprio.
Good morning. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Joining me on the panel, WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Frank, welcome back. It's been a few years and we have a lot of catching up to do.
Thanks for having me.
Let's get this out of the way first. As most people remember, when President Obama declined to endorse anyone in 2010, you said, quote, he could take his endorsement and really shove it. Do you regret that remark now?
Yeah, I look back on it. It was a very stupid thing to say. It brought a lot of embarrassment on myself, my campaign. It was just something that was at a period of time in a long campaign that I didn't run well, and it kind of put an exclamation point on a very bad period of time in my life. And but that's the good thing about what goes on in this great country is you get up the next day and you can build a better future for yourself, and that's what I'm trying to do, not only for myself but for the state of Rhode Island, getting back in the race here and running for state treasurer.
I think a lot of people are wondering if it was calculated. Was it something that you were advised to say?
Yeah, let me give you the direct answer to that. When the campaign was getting into the last week and a half, the campaigns poll every night, and about 10 days out, my internal polls had me down about 10 points. So in the back of my mind, you had come to a realization that the undecided voters were breaking away, and the campaign wasn't going to work out for you. So my state of mind wasn't a good one. Not to make excuses, I take full responsibility for the campaign I ran. And I got up that morning. I remember it was 5:30 in the morning, and I saw the stories, and I said something I just should have never said. I thank the president for really just brushing it aside, saying no big deal, and not getting into a back and forth with me or the campaign.
So it really was just a genuine, because you ran a very disciplined campaign. I think that's why all of us reporters who covered you were surprised, because you had a message and you stuck to your message most days. So for you to say something like that, but it really was just how you were feeling at the time.
Sure. Well, I thank you for the kind words about the campaign. I wish it had worked out different, but I'm looking forward now, and I'm excited about the next year and a half, and been getting a lot of encouragement as I've started off this campaign.
You said that your internal polling showed you about 10 points off when you made that remark. So do you think was that the turning point for you? Did you already expect to lose at that point, or do you attribute that remark to your loss?
No, the polls, again, before that remark were the 10 points down. So what happened nationally, and you saw most of the undecided votes that last week and a half break towards the Republican candidate, not only locally here, but nationally. It was the biggest change in Congress, from Democrat to Republican in decades. So, Governor Chafee ran a good campaign, John Robitaille ran a good campaign, Ken Block ran a good campaign. I didn't run a good campaign. So there's a little bit of that in this campaign also, and we'll stay focused and get as much help as we can, and stay focused on what the future of Rhode Island should be, and that's a bright future.
You mentioned waking up the next morning in America, you can start again. And I was saying to Tim when we were getting ready for the show that I remember when I got to Rhode Island as a reporter, people said, "Oh, Treasurer Caprio, he's the next governor of Rhode Island." I imagine you heard it a lot more than I did as Frank Caprio himself. What was it like when the campaign was over and you said, "Okay, I'm not going to be governor. This didn't work out." What were those months afterwards like? What do you sort of, few people get to where you got, even if it didn't work out at the very end.
Sure. No, I was in office in one form or another for 20 years. So you had a whole routine, both with election cycles and with what you did during the day with your work, and being involved in public service. So that was a big change. But I was fortunate. I had an offer to join a financial firm that had a national footprint. So over the last 2.5 years, I've really traveled the country. I've done business from coast to coast and met so many interesting people, seen so many great businesses start and grow, and been part of those successes. So, I didn't look back. I didn't sit in my house and twiddle my thumbs saying, "And now what do?" I got up and
not at all,
and got involved with what opportunities presented themselves to me at the time.
If it was so great and you were having so much fun traveling the country, and I have to assume, forgive me, making a lot more money than being general treasurer, why are you getting back into it again?
Yeah, great question, Tim. I look at Rhode Island right now and I know we can do a lot better. And I look at the Treasurer's Office as a place where you can really make a big difference. I was there during 2007, 2008, 2009, some of the most
Tough
turbulent and difficult years that this country has ever seen and probably will ever see when it comes to the markets and managing money during that time. With what I focused on the last 3 years, I've spent a lot of time in state treasurer offices across the country. Probably met, I was thinking about this last night, in their offices, about half of the state treasurers over the last 3 years. And the ones that had been there for many years before the global financial collapse in 2008, 2009, they say those couple of years were the equivalent of maybe 10 to 15 years of experience because of what you had to deal with minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, as the markets were reacting to all the problems. So I have all that experience. I guess I've earned it the hard way, and I'd like to deploy it now back in the office. If I'm successful getting back in the office, I'll run that office differently than I did last time, in that I'll be solely focused on the work of the state treasurer's office. Not to say that we didn't do a good job last time we were there, but I had part of my day focused on gearing up to run for governor, and part of my day focused on running the office. And I don't think that's the right way to run that office. So I'm not looking to go there as some kind of platform to run for something else. I'm looking to go there, be state treasurer, stay focused on the work there, and turn in a superior product for the people of Rhode Island.
Well, it's widely assumed that Gina Raimondo is going to run for governor. If she does that, is she going to be doing disservice to Rhode Islanders, because she's going to be doing exactly what you did, running a campaign and running the office of general treasurer?
Well, again, she's a very talented person, and I'll let her work speak for itself. But the job of state treasurer is hard enough. Running for another office while you're doing that is difficult. You need to really, be focused and have a lot of energy and a lot of support and a great team to pull that off. So, not to say that that the future isn't very bright for her. I think it is, but I'm just being very realistic with having been there and having done it. It's not an easy drill to accomplish.
We have a lot of questions about how you're looking at the office now, but just quickly on politics, will you run as a Democrat, an independent, or a Republican?
Yeah, well, I disaffiliated partly because of the work I was doing. I was going into a lot of offices of elected officials across the country, and professionally I thought it was better for me to go in without a party label. You know how politicized many offices are, I'm sure, as you've seen by covering them. But right now I'm unaffiliated, I'm independent. I think last time I checked, over 50% of Rhode Islanders are also registered independent. So I'll stay here for now, and as we get closer to next June, I'll make a final decision on that.
Do you think you might be offending, unless you run as an independent, might you be offending either the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, or the Moderate Party by being on the fence right now? What if you decide, I guess, why not just say, I'm a Democrat? You've always been a Democrat. Why are you hedging your bets?
Like I said, there's plenty of time to make that decision. My past speaks for itself. I was a registered Democrat and ran as a Democrat, over 20 years. So I'm comfortable with where I am right now, and I'll make that final decision down the road.
You mentioned Gina Raimondo. Obviously, huge news out of the Treasurer's Office in the last couple of years. She's become very well known nationally, and there was the pension law in 2011. Just first and foremost, weigh in. What do you think of the law that passed in 2011, overhauling the pension system in Rhode Island? It's now being challenged in court. There seems to be some friction between Governor Chafee and Treasurer Raimondo about whether they should be open to changes. But what do you think of that law as you watched it get passed and put together? You know that issue pretty well.
Sure. Well, in April of 2010, when I was running for governor, I put out a very detailed plan to strengthen the pension system, which included a hybrid plan. And really the foundation of the plan that was passed in 2011 was a hybrid plan. So I guess our work...
For people at home, that's like partly a 401k, partly an old-fashioned pension.
Correct. So, and some of the staff that was there when I was in office that worked on that were the same people that worked on it with Treasurer Raimondo. You know, there was one event that transpired between when I first put out my plan and when it eventually became law in 2011, and that was the bankruptcy of Central Falls. I think when that bankruptcy happened and the judge sat there and with a stroke of a pen cut pensions in half of the retirees from Central Falls, I think that really awakened the decision makers in our state that they needed to proactively make some changes and not see a similar event happen on a wider scale. So I give the legislators, you know, Speaker Fox and the leadership, Senator Piver-Weed, a lot of credit, because that's where the change had to be made. I give Treasurer Raimondo a lot of credit for spearheading the issue and making it very understandable as she put out her reports and did her presentation. So at the end of the day, it solved a lot of problems. It solved a budget problem. My plan never had the COLA, the cost of living.
Yeah, that's a key difference.
The cost of living cut or freeze. You know, that's what's being challenged in court. Again, I put out a plan in the scope of a campaign discussion, and I was very cautious, and I didn't want to put anything in my plan that would have been easily disputed by case law that was on the books at the time. So I didn't go down the
Does that mean you don't have a lot of confidence in the state's stake in the lawsuit that is playing out right now?
There's a strong argument on both sides, and it's uncharted waters because of the financial condition that the state is in. But yes, there are cases in the past that are more on the side of not being able to touch a cost of living policy once it's in effect for a retiree. So it's going to be a tough decision for the courts. I'm sure the trial court won't be the last stop. It will go to the Supreme Court unless there's some mediation. So let's see what happens.
You know, critics of Raimondo's pension reform plan say she created the crisis primarily by lobbying the retirement board to lower the expected rate of return on the pensions fund investments from 8.25% down to 7.5%, and that, of course, spiked the unfunded liability. I'm wondering how you feel about her lowering the expected rate of return. Was that a wise move or not?
Well, Warren Buffett says a fair rate of return is 6%. So 8.5%, I think, was an outlier on the high end. 7.5% is more in the scope of what you see around the country right now. So I think we need to have a set of expectations in our state that are realistic.
Why didn't you lower it then?
Well, I started the process at the retirement board level to study the issue. It's not something where you go in one meeting and say we're changing it. Just like anything, again, this gets to my experience in the Treasurer's office. To bring about change, it takes the right focus and the right process and the right planning. So to make a major change like that, you go to your consultants and actuaries, you get the data from across the country, you do the study that sometimes will take 6 to 12 months, you educate the board that has to make the decision. The board is 15 people from all different constituencies, and then when you get the support backed up by the data, then you can bring about the change. And so just like the changes to the pension system, the changes to the rate of return, it's not something that you snap your fingers and
But we have to go to a break soon, but are you worried about perception at all, Frank, that maybe some people might think, well, Gina Raimondo came in to clean up the mess that Frank Caprio left behind?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of work to be done in that office, and every new treasurer will come in and put their imprint on the office. I know when I first took office, I made major changes, brought in new staff, started to do things differently. Treasurer Raimondo has put her imprint on the office, and whoever's there next, I hope it's myself, for the sake of the state, that we will go in there and put our imprint on the office also. But you know, it's a very important job. You have a pension fund with $7.5 billion that needs to be managed. You have over $8 billion of bills that go out with your signature on them. And that's the other great thing about the office is you can weigh in on state spending and local spending pretty much anywhere you want because it's your name on the check, just like your own checkbooks in your own house. You know, you're not letting those checks fly out there without a lot of scrutiny and oversight. So you need to do the same thing when you're in that office.
All right, we're going to take a break. Our guest this week is former Treasurer Frank Caprio, now again a candidate for Treasurer. When we come back, we're going to ask Frank Caprio to weigh in on the 38 Studios controversy. Should the state pay back the bond? Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. To my right, Ted Nisi from WPRI.com. Our guest this week is former Treasurer Frank Caprio. Ted.
Frank, the month after you left office, Treasurer Mundo disclosed that the Securities and Exchange Commission is investigating apparently Rhode Island's pension disclosures dating from your tenure in office. The SEC has taken action against some other states. Do you know anything about the SEC investigation? Have you been contacted?
I have not been contacted. You know, this has been going on across the country with the types of disclosures that will go in those 50, 100-page bond disclosure documents that are done by the outside attorneys. I'm hopeful that, you know, Rhode Island will get through it without any major issue. I know we always try to do our best working with the lawyers and the outside bankers when we disclose, but I haven't heard anything along the way.
38 Studios, speaking of bonds, taxpayers are on the hook after interest be about $100 million, maybe a little bit more. Should we pay it back?
I'm very hopeful that the lawsuit that's been brought by the state against the outside advisors yields some dollars on that front. I would take a wait and see attitude position when and if I get into the Treasurer's office on this front. You know, I just saw that the state revenues are going to come in a little light compared to projections, so it's going to be a tough call for legislators to say let's cut programs and find an extra $12 million this year to pay the bondholders. When those bonds are, you read the document, those bonds are not guaranteed by the taxpayers of Rhode Island. You know, I tried to hold up the sale when I was in office the last couple of months, and actually in the lawsuit that's filed, one of the key counts talks about how the advisors misrepresented to the board what they needed to do and when they needed to do it based on, I was saying stop everything, let's wait until the new administration comes in and let the new administration decide whether this bond issue goes forward or not. And the advisors told the EDC board, no, there'd be all these penalties and problems if they held up the bond sale, which wasn't true.
To also remind people on that, though, you had a change of heart in that. I remember initially you were okay with 38 Studios, and then there was that moment where you said, you know what, as you pointed out, hold up, let's wait for the new administration. Remind everybody what it was that made you change your mind about 38 Studios.
When before all and I learned a great lesson as that unfolded. When the deal was being negotiated in private between the EDC and the other side and Schilling, none of the details were out. And then there was this, you know, euphoria that a deal had been struck. And I was asked, you know, what I thought of it, and not knowing the details, I said I would be someone that would share it on, just, you know, in a general way. Learned a great lesson. Then, as the details started to come out over the next few weeks, I saw that there wasn't a personal guarantee by Kurt Schilling. I saw that the jobs that were going to be created, you know, there was a big range of. It was just a lot of things that didn't match up with what I thought would be in the deal. I started to dig in even further, and that's when I said, let's put this thing on hold. There's too many questions here.
Let me ask you the contrary question, which was you were the one going to Wall Street and saying Rhode Island's word is its bond. You can, no pun intended. Mm-hmm. Are you concerned about the impact it would have if we did default, though, and maybe our interest rates would be jacked up if Rhode Island went out to bid for roads and other things we borrow money for?
No, I mean, you're talking apples and oranges. The type of bond that Rhode Island taxpayers stand behind are the bonds that when you go into vote in November, there's questions on the ballot. Do you want to build roads? Do you want to build a bridge? Do you want to build dormitories at the university? And when those are voted on by the voters, that is a guarantee, the full faith and credit of the state. The Studio 38 bond was not voted on by the voters of our state. It was a law that was passed by the state legislature that could be undone, and the cover of that bond document says this is not a guarantee of the state.
I got to tell you, Frank, even though you said at the beginning of that question that you want to take a wait and see, it really sounds like, to me, the needle's pointing toward, in your opinion, don't pay it back. Is that wrong?
Well, you have very sophisticated investors who bought that bond and got a higher rate of return because of the type of bond that it is, which is it's not guaranteed by the state. It's a bond that is supposed to get its revenue from a young company that really had no profits. So those investors knew what they were getting into. This won't be the first time that they have an investment they may have to take a write-down on if it doesn't perform as they expected. So again, I'll take a wait-and-see attitude. Hopefully this lawsuit will be resolved and there'll be a big recovery from that. But absent that, I think you can say very clearly that if Frank Caprio is the next state treasurer, he will not go into the office trying to defend the big insurance companies who bought this bond and making sure that they get paid.
Going back to the pension fund now, on the other half of pensions is, of course, the assets. How do you invest them? And Treasurer Raimondo is taking some hits from a Forbes.com contributor for investing 14% of the pension fund in hedge funds, which is a new initiative, different from how you had invested it. Did you ever consider going into hedge funds with some of the pension money? And what do you make of the criticism lately of Treasurer Raimondo on that?
Sure. Well, when I was in office, my goal was to reduce the fees that the pension fund was paying to as low as possible. And lo and behold, after I left office, a study came out that showed Rhode Island had one of the lowest per capita fee structures in the country, which again was a nice thing to read when I was out of office and having lost running for governor.
Could have used that in the campaign.
But it was nice to see that our work, put us at the right end of that measurement nationally, being a leader in reducing fees. We also, I think, Ted, you posted a piece on your Nisi Notes, to give you a plug on the good work that you do, showing that the performance of the state pension fund over the 10-year period, which I was, measured better over 10 years because my years fall in year 6 and 5, 4, 3, that we've outperformed nationally from a performance standpoint in the pension fund. So all those things considered, my focus, which was lower the fees and focus on performance through certain types of low-cost investments, yielded good results. Treasurer Raimondo has taken on a focus of trying to lessen volatility through taking a little over $1 billion of the fund and putting it in hedge funds that have less volatility than the S&P 500 index, which is the total market. That raises the question of what's the role of the pension fund. Is it to try and have less volatility over a near-term investment period, or are we looking 20, 30, 40 years down the road and trying to get the good years of performance on the upside, and maybe having to take a year or two where the performance won't be as strong, and factor all those things in. So her style has been to go down the hedge fund road. My style was more, let's go into the low-cost index type.
Sounds
of
like you might take another look at that if you were to go back into office.
Like I said, a new administration is going to come in no matter who it is, and I think the prudent thing to do is to go top to bottom through the fund. We did that in 2007. That's when we got out of the subprime mortgage bonds. There was a big chunk of those subprime mortgage bonds. We were the first state to confirm to the rating agencies we had no exposure to those type of bonds, and that was because we went through the portfolio early on in our.
We're short on time, Frank. A couple quick questions for you. One from me, then from Ted. Any advice for those running for governor in 2014?
Well, first of all, in Rhode Island, there's no shortage of political consultants and experts. Just walk in any coffee shop any morning and say that you're running for office, and you'll get a lot of unsolicited advice. So I'm not going to be that type of person, but having run for governor in a very competitive race with some very good opponents, I can just say one thing: it's a long way from here to the finish line. So you need to pace yourself. You need to get your rest. You need to keep, I like to say, keep, the real estate upstairs is too expensive between your ears, and don't let anybody get in there that starts to affect the way you act and the way you speak, and be yourself. And I think that was my greatest lesson last time. I was I think too focused on taking what the polling and the focus groups and the speechwriters were saying, and not going out there and letting the true Frank Caprio come across.
We're going to see a new Frank Caprio in this new campaign for treasurer?
I'll try my best. I'm looking forward to it. I know what I did last time didn't come out with the right result. So we'll scrap that strategy. And just like I think Coach Belichick would do sometimes, you get rid of the old game plan and try a new one.
Frank, we are out of time. Frank Caprio, our guest this week on Newsmakers. Thank you for joining us. For Ted Nesi, I'm Tim White. We'll see you next week on Newsmakers.